Good to have you with us tonight, folks. Thanks for watching. This is the report we've all been waiting for. The final jobs report before the election is now out, and it is all good news for the Obama supporters. The United States added 171,000 jobs last month. Expectations were around 125,000 new jobs. The unemployment rate is up 0.1 of a point to 7.9%. The reason behind the slight uptick is more Americans join the workforce. This, of course, is good news, a good thing. It makes October the 32nd straight month of private sector job growth. Who would have thought it? 184,000 jobs were added to the private sector. Numbers for August and September were revised upward. The job numbers helped President Obama, certainly on the campaign trail, make the case about the improving economy.
In 2008, we were in the middle of two wars and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. Today, our businesses have created nearly 5.5 million new jobs, and this morning we learned that companies hired more workers in October than at any time in the last 8 months.
With only 4 days left of the campaign trail, the candidates were all over the crucial state of Ohio. President Obama made 3 different stops today in that state. First here in Hilliard, Ohio, in the center of the state. Then out west to Springfield, Ohio. Then he headed north to Lima, Ohio. Mitt Romney was not going to be outdone. Here's a look at another Romney campaign rock concert and victory rally outside Cincinnati. Romney was also in Wisconsin this morning, portraying himself as the candidate of change.
The question of this election comes down to this. Do you want more of the same, or do you want real change? And we bring real change.
Do you want 32 more months of private sector job growth? Romney sure has a funny way of showing change, doesn't he? Take a look at Romney's surrogates at tonight's Ohio victory rally. Former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, former Labor Secretary Elaine Chao, Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal, former Homeland Security Director Tom Ridge, and also Ohio Senator Rob Portman. All 5 of these folks worked in the Bush administration. In fact, Mitt Romney's campaign's looking more and more like the Bush White House every day. Romney even pulled out the old Dick Cheney trick of scaring voters before an election.
The same path we're on means $20 trillion in debt in 4 years. It means crippling unemployment continues. It means stagnant take-home pay, depressed home values, and a devastated military. And unless we change course, we may well be looking at another recession.
Another recession? All economic indicators show the country is in a recovery. But Mitt Romney has no problem scaring voters if it helps him. President Obama called him out on that tactic today.
Right here in Ohio, folks who work at the Jeep plant have been having to call up their employers because they're worried. They're asking if their jobs are being shipped to China. And the reason they're worried is because they saw ads run by Governor Romney saying Jeep plants were going to be shipping jobs to China. Of course, it turns out it's not true. This is not a game. These are people's jobs. These are people's lives. The auto industry, they spend a lot of money advertising and branding and letting folks know that we're back and we're here in America and we're making American cars with American workers. And now suddenly you got a guy going out there saying, you know, something that's not true. You don't scare hardworking Americans just to scare up some votes. That's not what being president's about.
When Romney isn't buying scared voters, he's making up a fantasy about working across the aisle.
You know that if the president is reelected, he will still be unable to work with the people in Congress. I mean, he's ignored them, he's attacked them, he's blamed them. The debt ceiling will come up again, and shutdown and default will be threatened, chilling the economy.
So what's happening here is that Mitt Romney is telling the American people we need to cave in to the GOP hostage takers. Romney says the president should have given in to Mitch McConnell and John Boehner. Anything they wanted, boys. Of course, they wanted to defeat President Obama from the start. But despite their obstruction, unemployment has fallen to the lowest point since President Obama's first month in office. Today, job numbers closed the chapter of President Obama's first term and his economic agenda. It's worked. But if you need to be reminded of where this country was when he took office, just listen to House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi from my radio show today.
4 years ago in September, when President Bush was president, and on September 18th, when I had the chairman of the Fed and the Secretary of the Treasury and others in my office, Democrats and Republicans, House and Senate leadership, the chairman of the Fed said, if we do not act immediately, we will not have an economy by Monday. Are we better off today than we were 4 years ago? Our country absolutely is. Can it be better for many of America's families? Absolutely, and it would have been if the Republicans had not obstructed.
The president and the Democrats were able to get this country going, I guess you could say, with one arm tied behind their backs. Mitt Romney is ready to turn over the reins to the guys who caused the mess? Really? Voters have 4 days to decide which way this country wants to go. I'm joined tonight by Richard Wolff, MSNBC political analyst and vice president and executive director and editor of the MSNBC.com, and David K. Johnson, Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and author of The Fine Print. David, you first tonight. What do these job numbers mean? How good are they?
Oh, they're good, and they're good in the details. All of the job growth, Ed, was in the private sector. 184,000 private sector jobs. There were some losses in government jobs. That's why the number is 171,000. They revised upward the number of jobs for the last 2 months. So remember Jack Welch and the Republicans saying, oh, they were manipulating the numbers and attacking the professionalism of the people who do this work. Well, they actually understated things a month ago. In addition, the number of people who voluntarily quit their jobs, now that's an indication of how confident people are they can find a new job. That number went up, so that's a very good sign. And there's another number in a different report. The number of housing vacancies, both rental and owner-occupied, has declined, which tells you the housing market is improving. So all of these numbers are getting better. They're not as far along as we need to be, but the direction is very clear, and it's all upward.
Richard, how important is this jobs report politically? I mean, in the closing days to the election, certainly it must have a much more of an impact than, say, something maybe 6 or 7 months ago.
Right. Well, it certainly isn't bad news, and to that extent, that's a good thing for the president. But actually, I don't think any single month of statistics is as important as seeing consumer confidence pick up so steadily over the last several months. And you can see it not just in these statistics, but you can see it in consumer spending. The way economists measure consumer confidence has been rising very steadily, and that does translate directly to job approval numbers, which have also been ticking up steadily for this president. So, for years, really for most of the first term, people in the media, and certainly Republicans, have been beating up the president saying, how come his job approval numbers are only in the low 40s? Nobody gives him credit when actually they've gone into the high 40s and top 50%. And you know very well that the folks in Boston who are running the Romney campaign are looking at their numbers, and they know it's that much harder to unseat a sitting president when your approval numbers are close to 50%, maybe even above it.
David, we've had these radical governors in a number of states on the Republican side who have refused to work with the president and stalled a great deal. In fact, they have attacked public sector workers. Some 3 million public sector jobs have been let go in the 4 years here, especially in the last couple of years. There's been a lot of them. What if they had not been let go? What would our economy look like?
Oh, we would be in much better shape, Ed. You can figure out how much the economy needed stimulus. It's a simple mathematical equation. Spending equals income. Income equals spending. If one goes down, the other has to go down. When the private sector goes into recession, that's when the government should increase spending. When the private sector is doing really well, that's when you cut back on government spending. That's what Clinton was doing. And if we had had the size stimulus we needed and we hadn't devoted 40% of it to tax cuts for business, today we would have a lot more teachers, which is future wealth for America, nurses, and cops on the street. So this is very important, and we would be in much better shape but for the Republicans' insistence on taking care of the plutocrats.
Yeah. Richard, what about these scare tactics that Mitt Romney is using, and now the president calling him out on it, the Jeep lie and all the recession talk?
Well, it's recession talk, but there's so much projection that's gone on with this Romney campaign. There's the recession talk, but actually I thought more outrageous was this idea that if the president gets reelected, we're going to be back to default and this idea of a government shutdown, as if it's the president who thinks that defaulting on America's debt or shutting down the government is a good idea. Those are the Republican tactics. I'm amazed at how much and how apparently confident Mitt Romney can be in projecting projecting Republican positions onto this president and accusing him of being responsible for everything the Republicans want to do. It's just not the case. He knows that. Republicans know that. But it's something that he seems to think he can spin to voters right now.
I don't know if job numbers are going to motivate people to get out and vote, but certainly whoever the next president is, what kind of an economy, David, would you say that president would be inheriting?
Well, we still have a lot of work to do. It took 32 years, or 28 years at least, to do the damage that we're now cleaning up. And so there are a whole variety of policies we need. Look what's happened in New York. The infrastructure, that's a lot of what I write about in my new book, The Fine Print, has fallen apart. And companies are hollowing out utilities so they can artificially inflate profits. We have a lot of building to do, a lot of investing to do in America. And now that we're winding down these wars, we should be able to do that. The Republicans, however, have a clear view that the real problem we face is that the rich don't have enough, and we need to make sure they have more.
Richard, you anticipate any movement in the next few days, or is everybody pretty much where they are? Is there going to be any turnaround now?
I think there is a movement because, you know, we've still got to wait and see how the polls are going to shift post Hurricane Sandy. You know, again, one of those great things hearing Mitt Romney say that this president cannot work with Republicans. I think we just saw him working pretty well with Governor Christie. So let's see how the polls unfold in the next day or two, because that's the critical moment when those last-minute undecideds, and there are still some out there, will be making up their minds.
All right, Richard Wolff, David K. Johnson, great to have you with us tonight on The Ed Show. Thanks for joining us.